אנחנו נזמין את יונתן. אנחנו נזמין את יונתן לכאן, יחד עם אסתר. אנחנו נזמין את אסתר שתביא את יונתן. נזמין לכאן, לבמה, לומר לנו כמה מילים, לחזק אותנו, לתת לנו, ככה להרביץ בנו תורה, ולתת לנו תשובה לשאלה, איפה לוקחים כוחות להידבק במשימה, בלי להיחלש ולהגיע למימוש שלה בסופו של יום. בבקשה, בוא אלינו.
שלום לכולכם. אין מילים לתאר, אין מילים להגיד לכם כמה אנחנו שמחים להיות פה איתכם, כמה אנחנו גאים בכם, כמה אנחנו אסירי תודה לנדיה וליהודית ולראש המועצה על כל מה שהם עושים כדי לחזק את עם ישראל בארץ ישראל. אוקיי. אני רק אקח דקה להציג את בעלי, את יונתן. הוא ידבר איתכם. הוא ידבר על הנושא של ריבונות וירושלים רבתי, אבל הוא ידבר על זה באופן קצת שונה. אם יש לך בית וכל מה שדואג שמדאיג לך זה הגן ולא הבית, ואין ביטחון בבית, אז לא יהיה בסוף לא בית ולא גן ולא כלום. וזה פחות או יותר המושג שיונתן רוצה להציג בפניכם. הוא ידבר באנגלית, אבל חז"ל אומרים לנו שמילים שיוצאים מן הלב נכנסים ללב. אז הוא ידבר עליכם לב ללב, ואני בטוחה שכולם יבינו אפילו אם התרגום לא נכון. אוקיי. יכול להיות שהוא מדבר ברמה יותר מדי גבוה בשביל נוער, אבל כפי שאמר ראש המועצה, אתם המנהיגים של העתיד, והמסר של יונתן חשוב מאוד לעתיד, לכן חשוב מאוד לכם. בהצלחה.
חברים, שלום. בשם השם נעשה ונצליח. I would first like to thank Nadia and Yehudit for doing a wonderful job and for having the kindness to invite Esther and myself to this occasion. I would also like to thank Mayor Naaman for his very kind words of introduction. When I look at all of you here, I'm reminded of the fact that our ancestors walked this land thousands of years ago, and nobody questioned why we were here or why we owned this land. You all know the answer to that. Hashem, HaKodesh Baruch Hu, gave us this land. Nobody else. Not the United Nations, not the League of Nations, not a British lord, and certainly not the United States. Nobody but HaKodesh Baruch Hu gave us all of this land. When you look at these trees, you breathe the air, you look at the ground, you look at the flowers, this is what our ancestors saw thousands of years ago. And they're calling to us now not to forget their sacrifices. And we know what sacrifices they made. With the Churban of the first Beit HaMikdash, the Churban of the second Beit HaMikdash, the Churban Europa, and now we're here, back again. We don't have to explain or excuse or justify our belief that this land is ours, was, is, and will always be ours. No one has the right to tell us where to live. The days of the ghetto are over. We're free Jews in the free Jewish land. And nobody, not even the President of the United States, has the right to tell us where we can live and where we shouldn't live or where we can't live. He has enough problems of his own to worry about. But speaking of problems, there are two problems I want to talk to you, young future leaders of our country, should be aware of. They are representative of our failure as a nation right now. These are hard words, and I'm sorry to express them, but it's time that we all grow up now. You all know what's going on with the Yeshuv of Evyatar. I have a personal reason for wanting that Yeshuv to flourish and to exist. His name is Yehuda Gweta, a young yeshiva boy, young man, who was murdered at the Tepuach Junction. Esther and I were there just before to do a Hachnesat Sefer Torah at Kever Yosef. And it didn't look good then, what we saw. And I said to my wife, I don't have a very good feeling about this. And sure enough, just a few weeks later, one of our own was murdered. I guess the Minister of Defense, Mr. Gantz, has no problem destroying a Jewish settlement. But he can't bring himself to eliminate all the illegal Arab construction in Area C, our area. The second problem, what we call Flag Day. Canceling this day in the face of threats, where will it end? They don't like Jews praying at the Kotel? They don't like Jews wearing a Mogen David? They don't like Jews walking the streets of Yerushalayim? Our security people don't have any problem with Arab mobs rampaging through the streets of Jerusalem. And Esther and I have seen this with Palestinian Authority flags or Hamas activists displaying their flags on Har HaBayit. Can you imagine that? Think about that for a second. Har HaBayit. And this is okay. They can wave their Hamas flags on Har HaBayit, but we can't walk through our capital with our flags. This is the mission that all you young people have to keep in mind, the mission to change this mentality. The mentality is one of fear. We fear no one but Hashem, period, nothing else. And never forget that. I lived by that rule for 30 years in prison, and here I am. Before turning to the expansion of Jerusalem's municipal boundaries and the security of Jerusalem itself, we have to discuss two other issues, what I call critical or foundational issues, that have to be kept in mind. And I'm quite certain that none of you here have been taught these two lessons in school. The two myths that in 1948 we regained our sovereignty. We did not. We have a Knesset in 1948, we had an army, we had a flag, we had a national anthem, but we didn't have sovereignty. Why? Because we didn't regain our entire land of Eretz HaKodesh. In 1967 was the second myth, that we won the war for Yerushalayim. We didn't. We won a battle. And for every year after that victory, we've been losing Yerushalayim brick by brick. As far as the new government is concerned, that will probably be coming in shortly, you should remember something, and you should take heart from this. A lot of people are unhappy right now. A lot of people are scared. Thank you. Don't be scared. Remember, God in heaven, HaKodesh Baruch Hu, is watching over us, and He's watching us. He's also judging these people that will be coming into office. But He's also watching us very carefully and how we behave. Do not be afraid. I can give you, and it's time basically to start thinking this way, because you're going to be responsible for the land very shortly.
מקבלים בברכה את הרב הגאון, הרב שמואל אליהו שליט"א. בוא לכבד אותנו בנוכחותו. אשריכם, 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 תלמידי חכמים. אשריכם, 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 תלמידי חכמים, שדברי תורה חביבים עליכם ביותר, שדברי תורה חביבים עליכם ביותר.
שלום, כבוד הרב שמואל אליהו שליט"א. The new government. We may have a new prime minister very shortly, Naftali Bennett. I'm sure this is as much a surprise to him as it is to everyone who voted for him. He understands that he has nowhere to go because he burned his bridges to all of us here. So he's going to have to do something for us in order to maintain some self-respect. I don't know what it will be, but I do know that all of us have to push and show no fear. One of the most important points you should remember with this new government is we need the 4 communities in the northern Shomron that were brutally evacuated under the Hitnachut. If we get nothing more out of this Frankenstein government than the return of these 4 communities to our control, it will be well worth the fight. before they basically implode. I can't believe that we're going to have to justify roads and settlements. We shouldn't. As you may know, under the terms of Oslo, we have a right to build anywhere in Area C. No one has the right to tell us, even under these crazy accords, where we can and cannot build in Area C. It's insane. There's a possibility, a very slight one, that all of our communities in the Shomron and Binyamin and Yehuda will be able to build out to the full extent of their municipal territories, their boundaries. And we should push for that, at least. These are just a few of the things that we can maybe, perhaps, hopefully achieve under this so-called government. The focus of this conference is the need to expand Jerusalem's municipal borders. We also have to be aware, all of you have to be aware, of the need to secure Jerusalem itself. Because if we don't secure Yerushalayim, it won't matter how extensive our enlargement of the city's municipal borders will be. Both goals are equally important, they're equally critical, and we must pursue them simultaneously. Our goal is to ensure a Jewish majority in Yerushalayim by whatever means. And we have to prevent the isolation and division of the city. I think it's clear, by the way, that this is an objective of the new Biden administration. Don't be taken in by their soothing words. If you look and see who's actually working in the administration right now, who they've appointed, they're not our friend. Far from it. The PA up the road in Ramallah has been very clear itself, and I want you to understand this clearly today. One of their objectives is what they call contiguity, that is a connection between the Shomron and Yehuda, I call it their stolen lands. What they hope to achieve actually is a recreation of Gaza to the immediate east of Yerushalayim. And that will be a jumping off point for its infiltration of the city and its claim to divide Yerushalayim. And this must be prevented at all costs. E1 is critical, there's no question about it. And so is Atarot, which nobody seems to talk about. But it is very critical. I don't know if any of you have seen Atarot, but it's waiting for us right now. And we have to repopulate it before it's too late. And of course, Gush Etzion and its complete environs. What I'm describing to you young people here is a new battle for the approaches to Yerushalayim. We can't afford to lose that. This is why expanding the boundaries of Yerushalayim are critical, not just to ensure a Jewish majority, but to ensure a Jewish security. That's the key thing. When you look and see what happened in Lod, because I'm sure all of you saw it on TV, what you have to remember is what the enemy got out of that pogrom. It was an experiment a skirmish, if you will, to see how we would react. And we failed. We failed miserably. Our enemies now know that they have a green light to replicate their behavior in Jerusalem and any other mixed city, but we're looking at Yerushalayim right now, and to use that as a justification for the division of our capital. We have to remember that there are parts of Yerushalayim that are just as critical as the areas on the outer boundary of the city. Shimon HaTzadik, Kfar Timimim, the tombs of the kings. I could go on listing them. The only way, I'm afraid to say this, but the only way we're going to secure the interior of Yerushalayim is if we make sure the courts have nothing to do at all with our resettlement of these areas. We talk about illegal Arab building in Area C, which I'm ashamed to say the current government has allowed for the past 12 years. The same thing is happening in Yerushalayim. You go through the city and you're amazed at the building. If a Jew wants to put a merpeset on his house, it's almost impossible. But if the enemy wants to put up as many houses as he wants, well, he just goes and does it. And people are just too afraid to oppose it. That has to stop. I don't know how my words are going to be translated by the press. I can just imagine. I'm threatening democracy. I'm a fascist. I don't understand the dynamics of a mixed city. I understand that very well. I spent 30 years in prison because of this dafuk mentality. And it is dafuk. When Esther and I went to Kfar Timimim, I couldn't believe it. And I turned to our host, Daniel Luria, and I said, where are we? Are we in our capital? We had to come in like a military operation. This was obscene. No Jew should be afraid to walk the land, from Metula to Eilat, ever. It's the others that should be afraid of us, because they know they've stolen property. They've stolen our heritage, they've stolen our past, and if we're not careful, they will steal our future as well. Chas v'shalom. Chavarim, I'm not interested in just winning battles anymore. I want to decisively win the war for Yerushalayim and our God-given land in Yehuda, Binyamin, and the Shomron. And all of you young men and women here are part of that struggle, a part of that war. And I hope that in the not too distant future, you will think about this situation right now and wonder how in the world we got into this situation. But you'll all know how we got out of it. Faith in God, faith in our cause, faith in our future. And I say this in all humility. We do this לתפארת השם וישראל. תודה.
Stay a few minutes, okay?
טוב, אנחנו רוצים כמובן להעניק שי תודה ליונתן פולארד. אני מודה שלא האמנתי את זה שאני אגיד בחיים שלי, אבל תודה רבה ליונתן פולארד. תודה.
סדרה מיוחדת של יין של גוש עציון שיצא השנה, אבל יין הוא ישן יותר, שנקראת סדרת מגדל עדר. עושה אותה יקב גוש עציון. מגדל עדר זה המקום שאנחנו עומדים בו, ומגדל עדר זה המקום הראשון שאברהם ויצחק ראו כאשר באו לעקידה, בדרכם לעקידה מחברון לירושלים. אתה כבר הגעת ואתה רואה את המקום מבפנים. תחדש לנו את היין, כי הארץ שלנו התחילה לתת לנו פירות באהבה, וזה אחד הפירות שלה. תודה רבה.
עוד מתנה קטנה מן הנוער של עם ישראל. עשית למעננו הרבה, הקרבת מעצמך, ואנחנו, המעט שאנחנו יכולים לעשות זה לבוא ולהכיר. אז נוער ריבונות נותן לך אות הוקרה ובקריאה לריבונות ישראל, שבאמת החזון הזה יתממש, ויונתן עבד עליו קשה, שמעם ישראל באמת יוכל להיות בארץ שלו. אנחנו מודים מאוד מאוד.
He represents all the youth. He's the head of the sovereignty youth.
איתמר יום טוב, תודה רבה.
הישור הביטור, מה גדול היום הזה, אש שוקלת בחזה והמחשה שוב פולחת בשדה, אש שוקלת בחזה והמחשה שוב פולחת בשדה. את מלכוש טוריה וקלשון התלכדו בשערה, ונדליק השוב את האדמה בשלט ירוקה, ונדליק השוב את האדמה בשלט של תורה. קשור את האדמה בשלט ירוקה. כולם מוזמנים לבוא ולרקוד עם יונתן פולארד והרב שליטה. לפיכך אנחנו חייבים להודות לך, לפיכך אנחנו חייבים להודות לך.